Afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Florida Staffing Association's weekly webinar session. This week's webinar is hosted by our Jacksonville market, and I'm Shannon Boland, one of your board members and your local Jacksonville chapter contact for the Florida Staffing Association. FSA is your industry connection to learn, share, and grow. And today we are hearing from one of our industry partners, TextUs, a company that provides real-time communication platform for business. With us from TextUs are Jana Cowan. She's a senior account executive, and Jana has a background in staffing and is dedicated to working with recruiters to work smarter, not harder, through the use of technology. Also with us is Matt Kepler. He is the director of sales. Matt works with staffing and recruiting firms to help improve communication, outreach, and candidate engagement strategies. After today's presentation of Communicating in a New World, we will have time for Q&A. Questions can be submitted throughout the presentation through the chat box, but just remember that all participants are muted so that we minimize background noise. So please be thinking of your questions. It'll be an informal chit chat at the end. And Jana and Matt, welcome. Thank you for supporting our industry and our members. And let's get started.
Great. Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited. Matt's here. He'll probably be speaking a little bit more at the end after I run through everything. So I appreciate everyone for joining. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And Shannon, are you able to see that? Perfect. Okay. So I'm Jana Cowan. I'm with TextUs. I have been with TextUs since November, and I came from a background of staffing, recruiting, and then SaaS training. So it was kind of the best of both worlds for me to come here. I have that SaaS part, but I also get to work with staffing and recruiting firms. So I'm really excited to be a part of our team. For the agenda, we're just going to go over a little introduction to TextUs and kind of an overview so you kind of know who we are, communicating challenges that are happening within the recruitment industry, and trends that we're seeing in staffing and recruiting with COVID. And I'm also going to talk a little bit about preparedness when disasters come, meaning hurricanes, things like that, especially because we're getting in hurricane season if we're not already there. And they're saying it's going to be a bad one. So how are we going to prepare ourselves for that? I'll briefly go over some case studies, and we can talk about how they've used TextUs to be successful for them or just texting in general. And then we're going to have a Q&A, and hopefully you guys have some good questions for us. So we're excited. So let's get started. So a little bit about TextUs. We began in 2013. Most people are based in Boulder, Colorado. I myself sit in Florida, and Matt is up in Boston. So we do have a few of us that are remote, but the majority of us sit in Boulder. The two big things that kind of always stand out to me on this slide is how many customers we have, and then the text messages sent. So on the bottom right-hand side, it's our customers, and we have 1,000. 85% of those are in the staffing and recruiting industry. So our whole goal and our bread and butter and what we love and who we really just grab to is a staffing and recruiting industry. You know, we listen, we try to make changes to the system that benefit you guys. Yeah, we have other clients and they ultimately benefit from listening to staffing and recruiting, but you guys are our, lack of better words, our love affair, right? And then the next one over, the 27 million text messages sent monthly. What is really insane is I went back and looked at a similar slide from when I first started, and it was only 20 million. So we have really upped the number of text messages that are being sent by 7 million in 8 months. Is that because of COVID? Maybe. I think it's because people prefer to be sent a text message, right? You know, we have a couple of different modes of communication. Honestly, I think the easiest one right now is texting somebody. So just some things to think about. We love our customers. Here they are. Here's just a few of them. Some you'll recognize, some you will, probably know people who work there. So if you're ever looking to talk to them about what we do, you can always go there. But as you can see, we really do love the staffing and recruiting industry. These are our top partners. We integrate with Bullhorn and Salesforce and all of these here. So, you know, we really pride ourselves on trying to be a top-notch application for you to use to benefit your desk. So let's get into it. Enough about text us, right? So spam, I am sure we all get robocalls or spam emails or weird text messages or whatever, right? And spam robocalls were up by 19%. I think the other night when I was preparing for this, I just said to my husband, like, let's see how many we get tonight. And I think between the two of us, it was 4 or 5. What's funny is he kind of relishes in answering those phone calls and making those people feel uncomfortable or challenge them. On the other hand, just ignore it. You know, if I don't know the number, I'm not going to pick it up. So just think about that. When you're trying to call someone, they're probably not picking it up if they don't know who you are. How do we overcome that? How do we let them know who we are? Sometimes a simple text message beforehand to introduce yourself, say, you know, I saw your resume. Let's have a conversation. They know the number. They know you're going to be calling. You're more inclined to have a conversation that is of value than leaving a voicemail. So here are the response rates that we're seeing on phone and email. So phone is 5%, email is 3%. Emails can get lost. It can get sent to spam, never seen. I know that I'll sometimes clear out my inbox, not really reading everything that came in. So I could be losing emails that I really would want to see. But I was thinking about it the other day. So it takes, let's say, 7 to 8 touches to get one candidate. You're spending about 60 seconds on a phone between the call, the voicemail. Like, how much time are you wasting on each candidate just leaving a voicemail, right? When it comes to emails, when you're crafting an email that is, you know, obviously thoughtful because you don't want it to come off as disingenuous, how long is that taking you, right? If you are like me, you have a really hard time sending a one-line email. It just doesn't feel right. I have a really hard time just saying like one simple sentence. I don't know why. So I always add a lot of extra to my emails. Well, how much time am I wasting there? So those are things to think about when you're trying to get a hold of candidates. I'm going to say this over and over, and I'm going to harp on it. So you'll probably get irritated with it, but are we communicating with our candidates the way that they want to be communicated with? How do they want to be reached, right? And this can go with our clients as well. Are we engaging with our clients the way that best suits them? If you are working with a manufacturing company, is the manager of that shift, are they sitting at their desk looking at emails and answering the phone? No, they're on the floor. And so what's the best way to reach them? Through that cell phone, one way or another. So think about it. We don't even cold call our friends and family anymore, right? If my mom texts me in the middle of the day, I'm like, what are you doing? I'm busy. I have to work. Or, you know, if my friends want to chit chat, it's usually a text message beforehand and we're trying to coordinate a good time. I have, you know, neighbors that I don't think I've ever called them on the phone because we just text each other. So if we're doing that with our family, maybe we should be doing that with our candidates, maybe in our clients. Maybe we should be texting them before we actually pick up the phone to call them. It will give them an opportunity to be prepared. So, you know, out of everything, what's one way that we could get a hold of people? It's a text message. I was telling Matt the other day, I have a really good girlfriend who decided to move to Spain. And I would say 99% of the time, the way we communicate is through text message. I think we might have FaceTimed twice and she's been there for 2 years. So I'm even texting people across the world. So it really is I think we used to think that text was very impersonal or that it was just something you did with very close people, so maybe not impersonal is the right word, but you would never do it in a business setting. And the tide is changing, and the tide is changing for a multitude of reasons. We always have our phones on us, but it really allows us to take in knowledge in tiny chunks. You're not having to send a long email. You can set a time to talk to someone or engage with them to see if they're interested at the moment. So those are all reasons why Textus has been successful, or texting platforms in general. We're trying to communicate with people a way that serves them. So here's some fun facts, because who doesn't love them? So 98% of text messages are read within the first 2 minutes. On average, we're going to look at our phone every 10 minutes. That's 96 times a day. As I was talking, I knew I was getting a call because I have my watch on my wrist. So I have 2 phones with me technically, and it's killing me that I can't just go look at my phone. I think everyone's kind of wired that way. We look at our phones so often. We have it on our desk. We have it on our body. If I ever left my house without my phone, I probably would turn right around and go get it. So we know people are accessible that way. We're looking at a 90-second response rate for a text message versus that 90-minute response rate for an email. But I'd really like to go back on that email response rate of 3%, right? So you have a 3% chance that they're going to respond to you, and it's going to take them an hour and a half to get back to you. You have a high volume job, right? Time is money. You need to get that filled quickly. You need to know who's available. 90% of people under the age of 30 will check their voicemails regularly. I don't think I ever check my voicemail. I just work, yes. Personal, I if you need me, text me. Don't leave me a voicemail, because I have a 15-month-old. I don't have time, right? So text me if it's important. Let me know. And then 75% of people under the age of 50 prefer text to calls. If I love a good phone call, don't get me wrong. But I don't want to have a phone call for like, hey, are you going to be here in 5 minutes? No, that's a text. My 94-year-old grandmother sends text messages. So I really think the majority of people in America are sending text messages. How great is it when you can say call or text me? It's the same number, right? You can call or text me on my line. It's seamless. It's an easy process. People don't have to save 2 numbers for you. So just kind of think about, if you were that candidate or that client, do you want to have to remember 2 numbers for someone? Probably not. It's just easy to save 1. So here's our results with productivity. So we have an average response rate of 40%. I'm going to revert back to that 5 and 3% for phone and email. So not only are you able to reach people a little bit quicker, you're now getting a higher response rate. So it may not always be the response that you want. If you sent out 100 text messages and 40 of them were delivered, and let's say 20 of those people were, currently working and no longer, well, at least now you know, right? You can update your system, they're not available, and you have those 20 candidates that are still looking. So this allows you to respond quickly. It allows you to get answers to, if you're a recruiter, to get to your manager as to who's available, and it allows you to fill positions quicker, which is really what we want, right? Having bodies in those seats is money for us. It's money for us as a recruiter. It's money for us as a firm in general. And so we want to fill those positions. If you can be more productive and fill more roles faster, that's your bottom line right there, right? That's what's really important. Yes, we're helping people, and that's so important in the staffing industry. I mean, I think you have to have a good heart to be a recruiter, or to work in your staffing firm. You have to genuinely believe that you are helping people. But at the bottom line, it is a paycheck, right? You get paid on this. And so if you can fill more roles faster, it's just going to help you and your family in the long run. So this is kind of a view of what our platform looks like. A lot of other platforms will have something similar. So we have a web app. We also have a mobile app. So you can have conversations on both, and it will both be stored in the central area. A lot of other places will have that. We overlay on some of our partners like Bullhorn and Salesforce. So the conversations are automatically fed into the system. So you don't have to add notes in, but you want to be able to have this so that you can have a real-time communication with your candidate or with your client. If I texted, I sent out a campaign text to, let's say, 20 candidates because I was looking for a Java developer, and I then went out to lunch. We went to go get Chipotle because that's Matt's favorite, and 3 people got back to me. Well, if that's a really important job that I'm trying to fill, I'm going to respond to those candidates while I'm out to grab lunch. I'm going to set up a time to talk to them, and I can do that all from my phone. So it really helps with a seamless integration of work, effectiveness, and timeliness. So part of being a good recruiter or a good manager is being able to analyze the work that we do, right? How are we communicating with people, and is it effective and efficient? So a lot of A/B test texts are important. So I can set out a campaign and see what my response rate is. Was my response rate 20% or was it 75%? What did I do differently in those text messages? What verbiage did I use? Did I have a call to action? Did I not have a call to action? Was I addressing them individually? Or was I just saying, hey there? What were these things that I did to help engage the candidate or the client? So we give you those analytics, and a lot of other texting platforms will give that to you as well. They'll give you analytics so you can see that and you can compare and contrast. This is a great coaching tool. If you're someone who just really likes to improve, it's a great tool to go in there. You can ask your coworker, hey, what was your response rate on the campaign you did on Wednesday? Can I look at the messaging, right? And what's really so nice, as a recruiter, you want to have those messages saved so you can save your behind in some way if anything were to come up. Oh, excuse me. And as a manager, you want to be able to see those conversations that are going on for coachable moments, but also to make sure everything is kosher. You want to make sure that people are professional, that they're sending the right message and the right kind of branding for your company. So just kind of think about those things when you are crafting messages. Is this presenting my company in the best light? Am I being effective in my wording? And am I offering a candidate the right tools to obtain this job, right? Saying, hey, are you still looking? That's very vague, right? When you're sending a text message, you've got to be a little bit more concise. Hi, I saw your resume on Career Builder. I thought, I have this position. I think you'd be a great fit for it. Do you have time later today around 3 or 4 to speak? Or asking them what time works best for them. So when you're sitting at your desk and you're combing through resumes, and I know it can be very laborsome to go through them. I remember it vividly. You always have to kind of flip it and be in that person's spot. Now with everything going on and high unemployment rates, people are really hoping and praying that they get something because they want to be able to provide for themselves and their family. And so how would you like to be spoken to? It's hard sometimes when you have pressure to fill a position, which is important, but it's also important to take a moment and think about how they're receiving the message. Will they be able to get a hold of you? Will they be able to apply for the job easily? Everything like that. So as you're crafting your text messages, just think about those things. Be clear, concise, and thoughtful. So here's the fun stuff, right? So I feel like we've all talked about COVID till we were blue in the face, but we're going to talk about it some more because, word on the street is there's a second or third wave coming. I know here in Tampa, there have been, I think, the highest rate of hospitalizations since this all started. So it's coming back. You know, I think it's a little less scary, obviously, but it's still prevalent, right? And how does that change the landscape for us? So we have found that people who are texting are using it to nurture candidates who are unemployed but are job hunting. So those candidates that you may have had to let go because the company needed to downsize, nurture those candidates. You know, send them a text message, talk to them about the next role when it becomes available, and help them, guide them. Well-being check-in for candidates. So Cross Country Health is a client of ours, and they do well-being check-ins for their current employees on a weekly basis. How are they doing? If you are, you know, employing frontline workers, I'm sure it would mean the world to them to get a text message just asking how they are, right? To know that your recruiter or your firm is thinking of you is very thoughtful, and I know they would appreciate that. Important candidate and employee updates. So benefit reminders, right? Things that are happening, you can send that to your current employees or, you know, ones in the office, ones outside of the office that you employ. So those are some things you can do. Positions that are in high demand, you can send a text campaign to multiple people to see if you can, you know, grab a couple of good candidates for that. And client outreach. So, you know, if you have a relationship with a client and you have their cell phone number, why not text them? How's it going? Do you need help finding anybody? You know, you might just text them at the right moment and they're like, oh yeah, I do. I need so-and-so for starting next week. Great, I can fill it. And unemployment questions for temp workers. So a lot of times we'll see back office use this to help alleviate some of the pressure for unemployment claims that are coming in or questions that they might have. You know, as I've been preparing for this, Matt and I have been talking, and as I mentioned earlier, hurricane season is coming. I've also been working with a couple of different groups, clients in my territory that, you know, a natural disaster will come up, there will be a tornado, and they need to shut down a shop for, you know, a location for a day. And they are now texting their employees, hi, you know, we have no power, so please don't come in today. You know, updates like that are great. Also, another one, which is kind of scary, they were potentially looking at a high volume account to text everyone in their company, and it was a very large company in case there was a mass shooting. It's really scary that we have to think of those things. But I grew up in a house of Boy Scouts and my dad was in disaster recovery. So I have this mentality of like, you should always be prepared. Hence, this is probably why I overpack for any trip, or if I like leave my house with my child, I have like 12 versions of snacks for her because you got to be prepared. The kid's going to end up hungry at some point, so I might as well take it all. But how are you preparing for, you know, a natural disaster, COVID, anything? How are you preparing so that you are able to reach your candidates, deploy them if you need to, anything like that? I was talking to another client, and they had a contract with the government, and they have to be able to text all their employees quickly to see who can go in and help when a natural disaster comes in, and then they have to clean up and prepare, you know, get the state in better shape. So there's a lot of use cases for this. So, you know, think about how you can prepare now for what's to come. You know, a lot of people were kind of caught off guard with this pandemic because we just didn't know what to expect. And people who've been able to ride it out and feel a little bit calmer about it were the ones who were prepared for it. So Loyal Source, our friends, they actually were our first Bullhorn customer 4 years ago. So we built our integration with Bullhorn just for them. And we now have over 300 Bullhorn customers. So we are huge fans of theirs, but they've had really great success with using Texas. I was actually just talking, and I wrote this down, so I want to make sure I don't miss it. So I was talking to our chief revenue officer this morning, and he said this is their one KPI. It's like their first KPI they measure is how many text messages somebody's sending out, because text messaging has just been so beneficial for them. And it is one that everybody has to adopt. You don't have an option, you have to text message. So they've seen a lot of great success. So one thing I wanted to bring up, which I probably should have done earlier. So a couple of years ago, we did some research. So all of our sales leads that came in, 51% of them gave us a mobile number. So it's not just for recruiting. You could use it for clients. If someone's giving you information, it's very likely their mobile number. It doesn't hurt to text and to try and get a hold of them that way. So just something to kind of put in your noggin and think about. And then liquid agents, they boosted the response rate, their productivity went through the roof, and they just had really great success with us. 2,707%. It seems like a lot. They obviously measured it, but they were very happy with the work that we were able to help them with. Efficiency, quick text message response, and it overlays on a lot of platforms, so you don't even ever have to leave the page that you're on. So we're really lucky that they gave us such great write-ups. So on that same call I had this morning, we were kind of talking about the landscape of what's to come, or what employees are expecting. And it was really interesting. I think from the Wall Street Journal, they said that 60% of employees anticipate to be able to work from home, either part-time or full-time, through the end of the year, which I thought was really shocking. And, if you're lucky enough that is something that works out for you and your team, great. Well, how are you as a manager managing those conversations that your recruiters are having? As a recruiter, how are you tracking these conversations that you're having with candidates? It's important that you track it. Candidate ownership is a big thing. Even if candidate ownership isn't something that is, required or a part of your team dynamic, you still want to have that backup. If something went awry, miscommunication, you want to have backup that you gave the right answer and that you were being honest and forthright. So, you want to put it in your CRM always. As we say with our Bullhorn reps, if it's not in Bullhorn, it didn't happen. So I'm sure that's pretty standard across all ATSs. If you don't put it in there, it just didn't happen. We want to make sure that we're saving our information, right? So that's kind of, the presentation. I'm really hoping you guys have lots and lots of questions for me. And yeah, I appreciate it.
Anna, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Really great information, and I don't think there's probably anyone on the call or that we know that doesn't use texting for most forms of their daily lives. So
yeah.
Thank you for this information. The chat box is open, so if there are any questions, please submit them in your chat box, and we'll be able to ask them to Jana and to Matt.
Jana, it's Jared.
Hey.
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I have a question for you. In your platform, are there ways for the recipient of the text to opt out? Like, how are you controlling any opt-out laws and stuff like that?
Yeah. So we follow all federal guidelines for text messaging. It's kind of our secret sauce, as we call it, right? We're very much into compliance. So part of that is you can have when you first send a message, there's an intro that says if you'd like to opt out, text stop. So they can text stop and then they will never be texted again system-wide. And the only way for them to re-enter that texting is to then text back that number saying start. And when a candidate puts their information online, that is initially saying that they are able to receive, they're willing to receive messages. You know, when they apply for a job or they put it on CrewBuilder, Monster, wherever. Great question.
If somebody accidentally, or let's say at one point somebody replies stop, but then they wish to continue, the recipient, have to initiate that start text.
Correct.
So do they receive the instruction once they say stop? Do they
yeah,
receive instruction on how to reissue?
I think on our back end, our admin can always do it if it becomes too cumbersome, but you can just give them that phone number and all they have to do is text start to that phone number and it will allow them to be texted from there on out.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Jana, I don't have any questions right now in the chat box, but I think you guys have some FAQ
prepared. So this is where Matt's going to come in. So we're going to talk a little bit about frequently asked questions. And Jared kind of hit on this, so I didn't want to give it away too much, right? Hey Matt, can you kind of just talk to us a little about the TCPA and the CTIA compliance piece and what that means in the texting world?
Yeah, absolutely. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, so Jared, that was actually a great question. And I think there's a lot of different rules and regulations around texting. You know, as Jana went over for this whole presentation, it's really becoming the new norm, right? Texting is becoming that preferred way of communication for the clients and candidates that we're speaking with. But it's important to understand that if you are looking into texting providers, you absolutely want to make sure that you're being compliant with the TCPA as well as the CTIA. And certain platforms, I can only speak about TextUs, obviously, but in order to stay compliant with those different regulations out there and preventing, you know, your numbers from getting blocked by like the FCC, for example, the way that we have our platform specifically set it up is to help with the deliverability and ensure that you're staying compliant by basically throttling messages that go out. So this is specifically regarded to like a campaign, when if you're targeting 50 candidates in a given message, opposed to doing that one by one, through something like our system, you can send it out in a campaign. And what we would do is basically throttle those messages out at a certain rate. So as long as you're complying to a certain rate and it's coming from more of a direct dial phone number, you're in compliant with a lot of the rules and regulations with like the TCPA and the CTIA. And really the reason that that's so important, the first one is deliverability. This is going to help actually allow those messages to get delivered. But the biggest one for staffing firms in general and a lot of folks that we work with specifically is really to limit the litigation liabilities. If you're not really looking into things like the TCPA and the CTIA, you know, that's where you could put yourself at risk as a staffing firm when you are using these type of platforms to send out more messages in a given period of time. So it's truly making sure that you are compliant to help limit that litigation liability as well.
And hey, Matt, so when you talk about throttling, and I'm only asking this because we've had this conversation before, let's talk about high volume. What does high volume mean and how do we work on the throttle there?
Yeah, so it depends. I think the reason Jen asked that is because for a lot of those use cases that she was presenting for you guys for like the COVID-19 and, you know, knock on wood, COVID-19 is mostly behind us, but there are talks about a possible second and third wave. And there's also other natural disasters that we need to be prepared for. That's why we thought it would be relevant to talk about some of those for you guys today. Depending on how many candidates, clients, employees you might be trying to reach out to, we can set up our system specifically in different ways to help making sure that you are compliant with the TCPA, for example, to send it out to larger volumes for those notifications. And if they need to go out at a quicker rate, we have different ways that we can set up the system to add more direct dials into the mix. So now you're not just texting from one number, you're texting from 10, for example. So we have different ways that we can set up the backend of TextUs, for example, to help meet the requirements for the TCPA, but allow you guys to get some of those really important messages out quicker and more efficiently.
So talk to me a little bit, like, how would you differentiate a text message between a client and a candidate? What does that text message look like between the two?
Yeah, so I think a lot of people always ask me, I've been at Texas for about 2.5 years, and a lot of people ask me where they see this fit within a staffing firm. And I think it really depends on how staffing firms are currently communicating with different parts of the firm. So we're really seeing this being a no-brainer on the recruiting side of things, just about within every vertical: healthcare staffing, IT staffing, light industrial, you name it. It's really being pretty powerful for the recruiting side of things across every industry. But where we're starting to see it fit in a little bit more nowadays is on the client side of things as well. To get into a little bit more detail behind that, it's different from sales and recruiting, and this kind of goes back to a little bit of Jared's question as well. On the recruiting side of things, it's becoming such a no-brainer because a lot of those candidates, they're applying to jobs on your website. They're on LinkedIn, Monster, Indeed. So they're putting themselves out there and typically looking into those positions, meaning they're prepared and ready to be communicated by, the firms that they're working with. So that's them basically opting in to receive information on those jobs. And Jared, to take that a step further, we're also seeing a lot of our clients just adding that into the forms on their website. I know we have it specifically on our website. So if a client is on your website looking to do business with you, or if a candidate is applying to you guys, we're seeing a lot of firms just add in, by submitting this, you are complying to receive a call, text, or email from our business. So that's one thing that we're starting to see. But on the client side, to kind of switch that for you guys, where you're not able to send out this mass messaging or just start texting people, and I'm not saying that anyone would ever do this, it's just more high level, is if you were to purchase a lead list, for example, you wouldn't be able to just purchase a lead list and shoot off 100 text messages to all those leads. Those leads somehow got on that list, but they didn't opt in to be on that list. So you wouldn't necessarily be able to just cold reach out to leads that you might have purchased. But on the client side, where we're seeing it becoming a lot more beneficial, and I heard Janet say it once or twice on the presentation, is nurturing those clients. It's a heck of a lot easier to reach out to a client and say, hey, Jared, how did that conversation go with candidate XYZ the other day? It seemed like he would be a good fit. What are your thoughts? Getting some quick details from those clients that you've already are continuing to build those relationships with goes a long way, opposed to having to call or email every single time. So that's where we're seeing it start to fit in a little bit more on the client side as well.
Let me ask you a question about that. So if you are incorporating TextUs into your staffing company, and you have salespeople, and you have recruiters, and you have office personnel, and you have a number of different levels of management staff all kind of working off the same platform, how do you control, or how do you differentiate text messages that are coming in from candidates versus text messages that are coming in from clients, and if there needs to be any privacy or delicate information that shouldn't be shared amongst the entire company?
Sure. Yeah, that's a good question. So there's a couple different ways that TextUs specifically can set up our accounts, but typically what we're seeing is, what we do as a business is usually text enable a business landline. So we'll text enable each landline for the sales reps. We'll text enable each landline for the recruiters. And they usually have access to their own TextUs accounts where they're managing their personal conversations with the clients or candidates. So typically everybody just has their own accounts to really manage those conversations. In regards to the privacy, that kind of takes it a step further. We can definitely set up different hierarchies on our system. As Jana mentioned, we integrate into a variety of different CRMs and ATSs. So that information is going to automatically flow into it. And another thing that we're kind of hearing as well, or that I've heard a couple times, right, is they don't want people texting from their personal cell phone because they can't see those messages, right? It's our job as business owners to make sure that we are making sure that we're representing our company and our teams are representing our company. So if you don't have that full transparency, it's tough to do that from, just using a cell phone, for example. So it's really creating that transparent environment so that everybody can see all that information. but also it's creating a better end user experience for your candidates and clients. If you don't have that visibility and recruiter Jana is texting a candidate and recruiter Matt is texting the same candidate, that candidate is going to get pretty annoyed with that staffing firm and probably go on to the next one. So allowing that transparency across the board is going to help with the candidate and client experience, so that you're not recruiters aren't bombarding them. You know exactly the rules of engagement and who's working with those specific candidates and so forth.
Awesome. Good feedback. I want to ask another question, but a little bit more macro viewpoint. If you're a staffing firm and you are considering adopting a text platform, there seems to be several different texting platform companies around these days. How does a staffing company know which one's the right one for them?
Yes, I think that's a great question, and it probably comes into consideration to a handful of different things, right? How are you looking to use texting? What volumes are you looking to send out with texting? Do you use a CRM or an ATS that you needed to integrate directly with? Those are definitely a couple of the big things that you'd probably want to look into. And I'd also say make sure that you're looking into deliverability. Like Jana mentioned before, there's a few things that we do specifically to help ensure deliverability that, I can say just from experience that some other firms don't. So looking into all of that and making sure that you're just doing your full due diligence, right? And, as a software company, we understand that you need to look at multiple different ones to see what would be the good fit. But just making sure that you are looking into, firms that have the ability to give you that reporting capability, so you can see messages that might not have been delivered. Why were they not delivered? So being able to have that full transparency is definitely something to keep in mind when you might be doing this type of evaluation.
I know, having
Great
worked
feedback,
with
thank you.
staffing, the deliverability is a big thing. I know we would have someone apply for a job and you'd go to call them and their number is changed. And so you're able to find that out pretty quickly when you send a text message and it kind of goes nowhere. You can update the system and move on, or, and then you can go into maybe email them and get an updated phone number. So it's a nice way to add an additional level of data gathering as well on each candidate.
Great feedback, thank you. Another question about the legal side of things. Should firms be aware of candidates or employees sending any pictures of IDs or any personal information via text to the company? Is there any legal issue or legal exposure there to the staffing firm? So if I'm a candidate and I'm applying for work with Shannon and I text her a picture of my driver's license, is she exposed at all?
Yeah, so that's a good question. And let me just start by saying that I'm not an attorney, so I can't provide legal advice for you guys at all. I can tell you that a system like ours has picture messaging, right? So typically a lot of folks that use our system for the picture messaging capabilities is to get some sort of documentation that they might need from that candidate or client to make sure that they're still moving down that recruiting funnel. In regards to like healthcare staffing, right? Texting can't be HIPAA compliant. So we never recommend that you're sending like a social security number via a text message. But in regards to certain documentation, again, I can't give you a legal answer to that. I can say that people definitely are sending picture messages for certain documentation. I can't tell you what exact documentation that they're sending, but it is used to make sure that they are continuing to get some of that information in, opposed to waiting for somebody to scan it or send it back via email.
Got it. So you would advise anybody who is receiving picture messaging to talk to their employment attorney, make sure that whatever they're receiving via picture, they know the difference between acceptable and violating any type of HIPAA or other laws.
Yeah, and when and where it might be more appropriate to send it via secure email opposed to a text message.
Of course.
Another question we get a lot is sending messages with a short code. So I'm sure we all have, I know I have it. Amazon, I use it all the time. You know, when something's being delivered, I get like a 5-digit, it's from a 5-digit number. So let's talk a little bit about the difference between a short code and using the 10-digit like we do. Benefits, why would someone choose a short code versus a 10-digit, and why we choose the 10-digit?
Yeah, so historically the short code texting is more for a very, very large volume and typically used a lot more on like the marketing side to say, hey, we have this special deal at BJ's or come to Costco's for this certain deal, that you probably get those type of text messages all the time. Whereas what we do is text enable a business landline, which is typically the number that a recruiter or sales rep is already using to communicate with their candidates and clients. So it's creating for a much better end user experience with those candidates when you're having those conversations. So now you can promote that call or text, but it's giving that candidate a better feel, right? If I'm getting a text message from a 5-digit direct dial or 5-digit number, you don't feel like you're actually texting another human. And most of them, I don't even think you have the ability to text or call back either way. So doing it through the 10-digit direct dial number, it makes it feel a lot more personal. You're actually having that conversation with a recruiter on the other line. It's not just going into a queue of people managing it. So it creates just a better end user experience when you are texting from that number that candidate is already used to you calling them from.
I will say that's kind of the heart of our company. I know I was having a conversation with Andrew, and he was a founder of the company. And, you know, his big thing is it being called a conversational platform. He wants there to be a conversation. It's meant for you guys to communicate with your candidates, not just kind of spit out updates, right? They're able to send and receive. So that's really interesting and very cool.
Yeah. And one other part to that actually as well that we found very interesting is you won't even imagine how many candidates will be texting a business landline, not knowing that it's a landline or a cell phone number. We've had a lot of folks who actually have started using our platform, and they're like, who's this random number that's texting me? And then they find out that it's a candidate that they've been working with who's been trying to just text their business landline. So you'd be actually kind of shocked with how many leads you could be missing out on if you're not using a technology that can text enable your business landline, because a lot of candidates just automatically assume that they can text it. So there could be an opportunity to gain more leads from having a text enabled landline as well.
So we're
That's true. I've seen that a lot.
Yeah, we're going to end on the big question, the question of life, right? Is texting intrusive or is it effective?
I'd say in full transparency, it can be both. We still live in that world with, depending on who you are sending that text message to, they might find it a little intrusive. However, it is extremely effective. I'd be surprised to see just if we could do a survey on this call. I know we can't, but who's texting versus who's not texting. I'm willing to bet that most people have their phones within an arm length right now, and typically are texting on a daily basis. So as we mentioned throughout this whole call, texting is really starting to become the new norm for communication with those candidates and clients. And I always make the argument that a quick no via text message, which might be that intrusive text message, is just as good as a slow yes. If you can get a candidate to say no to you right away, that's going to save a recruiter significant time that they're going to be spending calling and emailing that one candidate when it could be an unqualified candidate. So even if you do get that once or twice, hey, why are you texting me? More likely than not, they're going to be open to it, and it's going to be a lot more on the effective side of the conversation because, again, that's really becoming their preferred way of communication as well. So even those quick no's, it'll get them out of your queue from chasing them down from calling and emailing over the next few weeks. Get rid of them, get somebody back in the queue, and continue to have those conversations, getting new qualified candidates into your funnel.
Did anybody have any other questions that came up?
haven't seen any.
Okay.
I just want to thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Texting is such a relevant topic, and especially some of the points that you guys brought up as far as management tools, as especially staffing and recruiting firms are finding themselves working from home, more today than ever. So thank you so much for all of the tips and the information. Everyone, Jana and Matt will be sending out the slide deck from today's presentation, along with their contact information. And from the Jacksonville chapter of the Florida Staffing Association, we appreciate you joining us this afternoon. Jarrett, do you have anything else? Thanks, everybody.
Good luck, everybody.
Okay,
Thank you so much, everyone. We appreciate your time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.